Welcome back to another episode of SaaS Buyers Club. I'm your host, Omeed. I'm a corporate and M&A lawyer that helps SaaS founders with their contracts and their M&A negotiations. And I'm here with Simon Leroux, who is the founder of Optionality. He's a 4X founder. He's had 2 exits, and I'm really excited to welcome him to the show today. Welcome, Simon.
Hey, Omeed. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Simon, you're a 4X founder with 2 exits. Tell me a little bit about your journey of entrepreneurship as a 4-time founder.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. It's been a while. It started about 25 years ago. First 10 years of my career was spent in the telco industry. Out of university, I was recruited by one of my teachers to join a big telco here in Canada. So I'm French Canadian, if you didn't find out yet. And I'm based in Montreal, Canada. So joined this telco, spend most of my time on the B2B side of things and marketing, sales, big data, and M&A. And I met with my business partner at that time. I was a client of this firm. He just started a new company that was selling data and business intelligence, and I just fall in love with his vision. So decided to join him. So that was my first entrepreneurial experience as a boutique consulting firm that was working in a very niche market called foreign direct investment attraction. So basically we were helping government bodies in the world. So the Department of Commerce of the U.S. administration or the state of Virginia or Florida or Invest on Hong Kong, they were all clients, and they were basically relying on us to attract companies to relocate or expand into their jurisdiction. So that was my first kick at the entrepreneurship journey. And this was also a really great experience from a learning standpoint. So scaling basically a business from 0 or 2 employees, well over 75 in the course of about 5 years. And that was also my first experience with receiving a LOI from an American conglomerate that wanted to purchase us. And that was also my first failure. So that deal didn't went through. And
how was it a failure?
Well, listen, I made tons of mistakes. Obviously, we'll discuss that later on, but we got really excited by the fact that somebody wanted to purchase us at a really great price, almost like a Cinderella story. So we basically, without really proof of payment, without involving any advisor, we went through a journey of multiple conversations, sharing information over several months, and involving advisors too late in the process. And basically the deal never happened because the buyer wasn't having the sufficient funds to make the acquisition. Out of that, long story short, there was tons of learnings, obviously, but it was also the beginning of our new chapter, because when I was building with my partners this consulting business, we were having an idea of using artificial intelligence to a lot of the work that we were doing as a research firm that was looking for those companies that are in growth and expansion mode. So we created a company called Gazelle AI that was basically leveraging artificial intelligence to predict the likelihood of companies to expand globally. And we basically bootstrapped that business, self-funded it from the profits of the consulting business. And we did 2 years of R&D and launched it in 2017. Went to the VC route, so tried to raise some money. That was, again, back in 2017. There was not that much AI companies at that time. We were pre-revenue. We had no experience in terms of building a SaaS company. So our previous experience as entrepreneurs were all in the professional services industry. So anyways, we ended up not raising, but we also ended up learning how to make money and have to make money fast. Really exciting journey, taking us from 0 to 5 million ARR in a very short period of time, probably less than 3 years, all bootstrap. And then the pandemic hit. Like a lot of SaaS founders, for us, it was a story in 2 chapters. I think that first chapter was fear, and we're going to lose everything, and we're going to lose all our clients and revenue. We'll not be able to sell. But actually, the pandemic had a very positive impact on our SaaS business, and was the case for a lot of SaaS companies as well. where people were not able to travel anymore. So they needed to rely on different ways to do business development, and using a platform like Gazelle to help them basically their reach and discovery of spending companies anyway. So it was a great story. So we did that, and we actually exited that business to KKR last year in 2023. So went through the full journey there. At the same time, sold my shares in my consulting business to one of the partners. So that was a second exit. And I skip a big chapter again. I don't want to spend too much time on that journey, but I also in the past created a private equity fund beside us. All at the beginning, we were basically doing like leverage buyout in the lower mid market, like looking for more traditional industry manufacturing companies. I've done a couple of acquisitions with partners, operators, and those businesses. So I've lived by being a buyer, being a seller, being a founder, that bootstrapping business, raising capital. I think that I can very much share some learning with your audience on both sides of the table.
Awesome. I'm excited to dive into it. So it sounds like the four companies are a consulting business that you had started, Gazelle, a private equity fund, and then the fourth one is Optionality.
Exactly. Long story short, and we're probably going to be diving into Optionality later on, but when I sold my business, we went through a transition with the acquirer. So I did that. I also joined Inovia Capital, which is a VC firm here in Montreal that have also a presence in Europe and in the Silicon Valley, that basically do early stage and growth stage VC for SaaS businesses. So I joined them first as an LP, as an investor in the fund, and then moved to IR, so an entrepreneur in residence, where I was responsible basically to help with some investment decision, help with some of the portfolio company, and also work on my next venture, which is Optionality. This is a new company that I just launched this year. So did a pre-seed round with VCs led by Inovia. I closed that in February. So I'm back at it. I'm like a guy that loves business, loved like the zero to $10 million journey. That's really my passion. Super excited about the Optionality. Optionality in a nutshell has basically been designed and built based on my experience as a business founder who went through buying and selling businesses. And I saw a lot of gaps and problems in the industry, which I know I'm sharing with a lot of I've been listening to a lot of the podcasts, and there's been a lot of talks about like how much like the business owners are waiting for too long before preparing for selling their business. But I've also seen it on the other side of things. I think that the business advisors are also not proactive enough with their clients, helping them prepare and create value for an optimal exit. So I'm addressing that with Optionality. So maybe we can talk a little bit more about that later on.
Yeah, that's interesting. I would love to dive into that. Before we do, one of the things that I heard you say is you went for Gazelle, you tried to raise money and you weren't able to successfully raise money. So then you took the bootstrapping route and went from 0 to 5 million very quickly. How did you do that?
I think that we built a great product with a great product market fit designed for the clients that were basically our clients also in the consulting business. So it was fairly easy for us to cross-sell to a lot of our existing customers at the beginning. That was helpful, and we were really targeted, really focused. I think that there's a lot of people are trying to build like a big company, and they try to be everything for everyone, and we basically decided to be like to all a niche. And I think it's a very good strategy for a lot of SaaS business. Like you don't need, especially when you want to sell your business and you want to sell it for a really nice multiple, a good strategy can be to be like the category leader in a niche market and really dominate it. And that's the strategy that we've used, with some pros and cons, which I can also talk about. Because when you do that, people will tend to tell you need to be present in more than one vertical, and you have like too much concentration in that industry sector. So there was it was helpful from a growth standpoint, but there was like some downside from a valuation standpoint that I can talk about later on as well.
Cool. And so just to close the loop, so your consulting business helped growing companies to relocate to certain, jurisdictions, like you mentioned, Florida, for example, so on and so forth. And the Gazelle, which was a SaaS tool leveraged AI and big data specifically in the niche of helping growing companies to relocate. Can you talk a little bit more about that in terms of what's actually the value proposition? How did you leverage big data? What was the actual benefit that you provided to these growing companies in terms of relocation?
Yeah, actually, our clients were the economic development agencies. Few people know that, but there's a big war in the world of attracting the best companies into their jurisdiction because obviously they create wealth and they create jobs. So there's every basically country, state, and large city in the world pretty much have an economic development agency that is responsible to do that, to find out companies that are growing and expanding and try to attract them into their jurisdiction. And a lot of our clients were outsourcing part of that work to our consulting business, but they were also doing their own efforts to recruit companies, and they needed to rely on data and lead generation to do that. So Gazelle was basically like a SaaS platform, a database product, if I can say that, where every companies were basically indexed on their likelihood to expand. We were providing tons of data points in terms of their growth journey, growth signals, expansion signals, current international footprint, and what was the potential for that company to actually expand or relocate internationally. So our initial beachhead was to go after those same big development agencies, sell them our data, and basically allow them to be more efficient in their efforts to attract companies. And based on that early success, we actually decided to expand into adjacent markets. So people were using us and the consulting and banking industry, pretty much every B2B people that are interested in international companies or companies that are growing and expanding internationally were potential clients of Gazelle. That's what we built.
Gotcha. So you're like a pitch book for economic development agencies.
Funny enough, like PitchBook was a name that we were coming across quite regularly, and PitchBook or ZoomInfo or like even a Crunchbase, they're solutions that were having some similar characteristics to what we built, and they had like strengths and things that we were not doing, and we were having our own strengths as well. Again, the way that we've succeeded in that market is to be like try to be the very best in our niche markets, and instead of trying to compete directly against a pitch book, which were VC backed and funded properly. We decided like just to be really good at what we were doing and build like a really good product in a niche market for those economic development agencies or those people that needed that international footprint of private companies as a specific data point.
And you had a connection to these economic development agencies. You had been working with them specifically to help them connect with these growing companies, to essentially encourage these growing companies to move to these various places. And so you saw an opportunity to essentially just expand using a SaaS platform that actually delivers more value to your end customer. And that was essentially how you found the niche for your SaaS platform.
Yeah, we built a solution for ourselves as a research arm and people that are responsible for lead generation and for direct investment attraction. And we also build a solution for customers. So that was what made us like a pretty good success in that space, how much we knew about the space and what was needed. Yeah, really proud of what the team has accomplished, and was a really good journey. But we, at some point between the three partners, the three founders, we decided that it was the right time for us to sell. And fully, we built a bit of optionality, and we were able to run a pretty good process and find the right partner for us. So that transaction happened in the early 2023.
Yeah, you sold to KKR, which is one of the top private equity firms in the world. The movie and the book Barbarian at the Gates is about KKR. Have you ever seen that? You ever seen that movie or read the book Barbarian at the Gates?
I did read the book, so it's one of my favorite books, actually.
Was that what the experience was like? I would imagine not. Yeah.
No, first of all, for us, we were really like an add-on to a platform company of KKR. We actually ended up integrating a company called recounts.io that was great data partners of ours, and this is all the connection. I don't know, for what I'm hearing from a lot of people that I know of in business that went through similar processes, is that We don't necessarily knock on KKR's door or like on any like big corporate development team and say, hey, we're there to sell for us. It was like we had a sponsor, people that we were basically doing business with, that we were partnering with, that we were seeing at conferences all the time, that thought that there would be some really nice synergies between what we were doing and what they were doing. And they are the one who brought us, to the attention of Kate, and ending up like running the entire process. So that's how the whole story happened. But we still did like a full, full process with an iBanker and went to market. We just ended up choosing to do the transaction with KKR and their platform company like Cast.io.
And so you ran this process. What was it that ultimately made you choose KKR over these various other options that may have been discovered through the bid process?
Yeah, it's tough because first of all, I'm not the only one. We're 3 founders, so there needs to be alignment in terms of interest. For us, like I know that a lot of people are talking about valuation and multiples, which is obviously very important, but I think that what's often not talked more enough about is like where the kind of like the deal conditions. So by that, basically, is it cash or stock? Is there earnouts or no earnouts? What are the reps and warranties? Do we get alignments on valuation? Is there any like requirements to stay in the business for a certain period of time? We had one of the partner that wanted to retire. For him, the whole idea of staying over for another like 3-4 years was not like something that he would really consider. So those are all kinds of things that were important to us. And obviously the fit with the culture, the acquirer, and their desire to keep on the team. That was actually like a big part of the reason why they wanted to acquire us, I guess. You never 100% know what was their reason. It's a very asymmetrical like process between the buyer and the seller, but there was a strong desire, and they showed that from the get-go that they liked the team that we built and the technology that we built, and they wanted to keep the team together. They were seeing some synergies. We knew them, so we knew it would be like a smooth process from that standpoint. And then obviously there's the valuation that is important, but it was the full package that we considered when making that decision.
Mm-hmm. And you sold 5 years into Gazelle. You had been building for 5 years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And how many employees at the time of sale at Gazelle?
We're probably like around 30 employees at that time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And what was like the ARR at the time of sale?
We were getting a little bit closer to 7 million at that time, growing. There was a good story, some challenges. Like every business, people tend to always paint the pretty story. And I think that's very important as a takeaway, is that don't try to hide the flaws or the weakness of your business, but try to actually address them and show that you know what they are and you have a plan on addressing what these things are. So for us, like we were going through growing pains, like a lot of bootstrap business that build the company really fast, grew really fast. So that was like, we were also looking at the right partner to actually help us take that business to the next level and basically benefit from their expertise and experience in scaling like a SaaS company.
And when you mentioned growing pains, you were going through growing pains and these challenges. Like what's some examples of those growing pains or challenges that you were experiencing?
The technological debt, for example, you're building features, documenting your code. We went through 3 CTOs. That was one thing shared with as we were pivoting and trying to extend into new verticals. We entered some market and exit some markets. So that was impacting us from a churn standpoint. So that would be another example of that. Just like normal thing that like companies that goes from like 0 to 5 and 5 to 10 million AR are facing, like recruitment. Like your first salespeople are great and you train them and you take them from like SDRs to AEs, and they've been on hundreds of sales calls with you. So you know that they're delivering the message accurately, but then as you're scaling, you have less control of that. So all of these growing pains that I guess a lot of your audience will recognize themselves in.
And so it sounds like these challenges were some of the thought processes around ultimately deciding to sell to KKR, but it also sounds like when you received the offer from KKR, you weren't necessarily looking to sell the business. It like came as a result of
we were definitely, we were in the market. We started a process, like we made our decision. It was not driven by these challenges. Obviously, it's part of running a company. You have like some great wins. Obviously, you don't go from zero to over $5-6 million AR without having a lot of celebration and growth, but it's also a lot of pains and tears and challenges. There was also a reality in terms of the ownership of the company where we thought that we brought the company to the stage that we could, that we needed either external capital or the right partner to take the business to the next level. And some of the owners were not necessarily ready to continue to do that for another like 5 to 10 years. It was a good timing. We decided that we would start a process. We were getting a lot of attention, being one of the fastest growing company in Canada, receiving tons of awards for the work that we were doing as well. So we had like several conversations, making sure that we were aligned as a group of founders, and decided to start the process. And it just happened that the right buyer was one of the data partner that we've been building a relationship with throughout this entire journey that ended up being like the perfect buyer for us.
So that's very interesting. I always like to like drill in a little bit and ask people in terms of, I hear that there was a lot of conversations. There was 3 founders. One of the founders wanted to retire, but was there like a certain point where who started the conversation of, hey, maybe we should think about running a process, for example? And what was it that actually really, there's something that happens, maybe you lost like the third CTO, for example, and you're like, you know what, maybe it's time we sell the business at this point. What did that look like?
Was it like one single event? I think that was like the growing pain of building a bootstrap business in a niche like market, and the difficulty to expand into new vertical and scale it to the next level without external capital or the proper partner. I have tons of respect from people that are doing that, as it's very hard to go from 0 to 1. It's harder to go from 1 to 5, and it's crazy hard to go from 5 to 10. And then, so every time that I'm seeing a founder who crossed that line, I have like tons of respect for us. We felt that, again, we built a very good niche market product, and we needed the extra push to take it to the next level. And there was no necessarily like 100% alignment on the willingness of all like the founders to do that for another journey. Again, like when you go from 0 to 5 bootstrap, it's hard. And then you look at it and you say, do I want to do the same thing again for the next 5 years? So when you're 40, it's okay. You're like, I still have another 10 years, 15 years in front of me. That's why I'm starting a new business, Optionality. But when you're like maybe older, you're thinking about the life differently. You're like, listen, I don't think I'm capable of doing that anymore. And there's nothing wrong with that. I think that if you can find a deal that works for everybody, and the proper like acquire that will take your company to the next level, that will help keep your team and take them to the next level as well. For us, that was like the thought process there. But that was over like several meetings. It was not like a once and done thing. Like there need, because you're torn, you're growing. So you're saying, okay, so maybe we can imagine if we hit $10 million, what it would be. But to be fair to you, because it's a great question you're asking of me, then I want to be really true to the people that are listening as well. Like for us, it was also like our difficulty to basically get to that next level. So we've tried. Actually, we were working with some advisors at that time that were like telling us all kinds of numbers. Why you guys can be valued between X and X here, right? And you're saying, I want to get to the bigger number. So what I need to do that. And part of it for us is like, you need to basically expand into new vertical, and you need to get closer to 10 million AR. And that will bring you to a totally like new set of potential buyers and valuation. That's easier said than done. So we've tried hard. I think that there was like 3 or 4 things that we needed to do. We probably did like one really well, and one, I guess we did it at, and then the 2 other ones were not capable of fixing the issues or getting to that next hurdle. And we just thought, okay, so maybe it's a good time for us to go and find somebody that has the financial capabilities and the expertise to take it, and the install base and all of that, take it to the next level.
So many founders, great story, by the way, thank you for sharing. And so many founders, I think, and one of the previous guests talks about this as well, often are torn between, should I raise capital for the next phase of growth to hit that next milestone, or should I sell my business? Was that a part of the conversation as well, where you guys like, hey, okay, we're at 7 million, for example, we want to hit the 10 million ARR mark, and we could potentially raise capital, and that'll give us the extra boost and push and so on and so forth to hit that mark? Or we could sell our business, and then it ultimately sounds like you decided to sell your business. Is that what the conversation was at a certain point?
Yeah, it was the conversation that since the beginning of the company. At the beginning, I shared that we've tried to raise some capital and we were not successful. We didn't really try hard, because I know how hard it is to raise capital now that I've done it. Even for repeat founder, it's hard. It's all the SaaS founders who've been doing it will know that it's not like a 1-month process and a 2-meeting process. At that time, we thought that it would be a 1-month process and a 2-meeting process. And I think that we have been done really rapidly, but at the same time, we were successful really rapidly and getting revenue really rapidly. But I don't know what's the right answer to that question. There's pros and cons of being bootstrapped versus VC backed. You don't necessarily need to raise VC on day 1. You can raise VC on day 500 whatsoever. So there's no right or wrong answer. I just know that for us at the time that we choose to sell, it was not even like a consideration, because again, like some of the founder wanted to leave the business. I still feel that Gazelle could have been like a really great, even a greater company with some VC money and the proper investment in the business. But I equally think that we found a great home for the company, the product, and the team. So
I find it surprising, though, that you had trouble raising VC funding, because there was a services arm of the business that was cash flowing. So what were the VCs saying in terms of, I hear that maybe you didn't have the 1,000 conversations that you needed to have to raise the VC funding. Maybe you only had 10 of them, for example. And had you had...
That's pretty much it, to be honest with you. Like, we went through the largest ones in Canada at the beginning and got a couple of no's. And then at the same time, we were operating, we were making money. So we were not like on the sideline, we need to stop everything, raise money, and then build. We were like building in parallel. And that's okay. So why do we need VC money? Because clearly we've been able to self-fund this, and now we're selling it and we're doing it successfully. So let's just stop that, and we'll revisit that later on. And we never really needed to revisit it again. Like there's a lot of benefits when you're selling your business and you have a clean cap table and it's bootstrap. There's pros and cons, again, like raising capital or not raising capital. And I don't think that's really the debate here. I think that there's going to be tons of great stories on bootstrap entrepreneurs and tons of great stories of people that took their business to the next level using VC partners, and not just the money, but like the right partners. They're important.
So you talked about some pros and cons about building a niche SaaS product. And can you speak a little more to those pros and cons that you observed, that you learned about, and that you can share with the audience?
Sure. I think that from a pro standpoint, it's much more, it's easier to be very good at something when you're focused. It's better. It's easier to have a lot of customer intimacy, also understand your customer, their pain point, their needs when you're really focused. So for us, that was part of the secret sauce and our success. Obviously, like the TAM or the addressable market is much smaller. So it's at some point, but I think after you get the early adopters and you get like the majority of the account, it gets harder to scale to a certain level. At least that was what we faced. And it's hard, and I know it's a challenge that a lot of SaaS founders will find. It's hard to find your next one when you build like a niche product. Part of your success is that the product is really designed for that specific market. And then once you get like the majority of the accounts in that specific market, and then you say, we can also do it for these guys, but these guys, they have some of the same needs, but they have like different requirements as well. And you end up selling product to a market where they buy your product, but they only use a percentage of the features or the value proposition that you've built. And I think that's part of the challenge that a lot of sales business are finding. From a valuation standpoint, also obviously has an impact because the potential buyer will like look at something that is scalable. The TAM market is too small. It can basically be less interesting for some potential buyers, but again, for other buyers, it's a good thing. Like they're trying to sell more to that specific market. They're strategic buyer. They like the niche market that you've developed. Again, I'm a strong believer that you need to turn like your kind of like weakness into strength and like just pivot and say, hey, yeah, we have a niche market, but look at our position in that market. We're dominating it. Look at our clients are loving us. Look at like the logos that we've managed to build and build a story for this is what we need to do to get to these other markets. So even if you have not done it, and that's very important as you're thinking about selling your business, for me, it's important to have like a growth story and to have a growth roadmap and start executing on it. So even if you've not necessarily all done it, you basically are able to demonstrate to the potential buyer that this is something that can be done if you put the right people and expertise and resources to go capture that opportunity. And that's something that we did well. So we were good in our niche. We started being good at some new niches as well. And we were basically able to demonstrate that this is a product that can be deployed in other industries as well as there's tons of potential. I think that's something that we did well and with Gazelle.
Yeah, so it sounds like your advice is play to your strengths, acknowledge your weaknesses, and I love your point about the growth story as well, specifically. If you're starting this is what I heard you say, and feel free to correct and add. If you're starting as a niche SaaS business, once you saturate your market, have a plan to go into these other markets and actually even start to go into these other markets so that when a potential acquirer comes, you can have a strong growth story to share with that potential acquirer that shows that the market opportunity isn't only limited to what you've built. It actually has much greater potential for them. And you can show them like, okay, here are these few steps that maybe we've only taken one step into this market, but it's been promising. Here's where you can take it from there. And that may potentially drive up, for example, the valuation of your exit.
Yeah, 100%. That's what I believe. I think that if you can have like early sign of like success, early wins, maybe conversation, people on demo, one or two logos that you've managed to win, a strategic hire and sales that you hired like recently that will go after this, like some initial traction going to anything that is part of that sort to say, look, there is a need also and a potential in that market. And we have some early evidence. Right now, it's not meaningful, but here's the potential. I think that's something that is important to demonstrate to potential buyer for sure.
That was the conversation that you had during your acquisition?
Absolutely. Yeah, that was part of the conversation. But yes, that's something that we did well, I think. And that was part of like building optionality. For us, building what optionality was about, like building relationship with potential strategic buyers during our entire journey. But it was also to basically build a growth story, a growth plan, showing that we were addressing some of the weaknesses, that we were aware of them and we were doing things about them. But like the acquirer will discover these things are not very hard to discover. Like when they look at your number, they look at your volume earning, they look at your KPIs, they have access to your data room. Like you might as well be more proactive about it. I necessarily like put a big spotlight on like your weakness, but say, hey, these are some of the issues that we're facing. This is what we're doing about it. We hired that vendor to help us do that. we just hired this new resource to help us fix this problem. We just entered that new market. We're doing something about our product roadmap to address a concern from some customers. Like, again, you have an action plan. And then on the positive side of things, on the growth side of things, you can say, we've seen that there's an opportunity in that vertical, in that space, and that geographic territory or whatsoever. And here's what we're doing about it. Obviously, with our limited resources, but look at how big this opportunity is and could be. And I think that's something that people that are looking at buying your SaaS will be looking at. They're going to be looking at, can they scale it? Can you guys benefit from their network, their people, their team, their distribution network? Can they make this better? Definitely something important.
And so starting to hone in on the acquisition, because I think we've covered the SaaS journey quite extensively. What were some interesting learnings like through that process that you came across that were maybe surprising, for example?
Tons of things, but I think that it's like extremely time consuming, not to say the least. I was very naive and thinking that there would be much more of the lift done by the iBanker and the advisors, but as the founder, at least for the size of a SaaS that we were, like, you're really like, your business better than anyone else. So from like building the list of potential acquirers to helping putting the sum together, the teaser together, from building the data room, assembling all of the data, that was like all the preparation work, and building the decks and the story decks. Like, I call them story decks. Again, my French-Canadian limited vocabulary, I had all of these, like, basically, okay, this is what we're doing about this. We're like, there was a lot of work involved in preparing and answering, going through the process. Again, you go through the process, you get initial meetings, they want to have like management meetings with the founders, and there's a lot of these things, and every time the same questions come back, so you're preparing a deck to address these questions. So that was a big learning. Certainly for me, it's obviously like the other thing is running your business at the same time as running a process. A sales process is something that is very challenging, draining emotionally, physically, from just a pure time standpoint, keeping everything confidential, like acting like everything is going well. So you're building a stock, you have the growing pain, you have a sales process going on, you still need to grow, because I remember I went through a process before that failed the very last minute. So you're like, okay, so this can also fail. It's not uncommon actually for deals to fail like in the very last minute. So it's the whole preparation and emotional journey is definitely huge and part of the learning experience.
Would you say that the LOI process, once the LOI was signed, was a smooth process? Did the transaction just glide along? Was there ever a time maybe when it seemed that the buyer wasn't as interested in buying the company, or was it just very straightforward and it just crossed the finish line?
Glide along is a strong word. It was pretty smooth. Honestly, it was pretty smooth. Obviously, we were a team and everybody had their role to play. And I think that's very important also. Like, I was more like kind of the operator of the company also. I was more like, at the beginning, we thought that, okay, so my partner would basically go in and run like a lot of the conversation with the corp dev team on the other side and our CFO and the iBanker. And I would basically focus on operating, keeping the business like operating and growing. But as the operator, they're the one that they want to talk to, because you have all of the information about what's going well, not going well. So that plan didn't last long. Like, I needed to be heavily involved as well as my co-founders. That was not a problem, but just like the amount of documentation, like just going through reps and warranties. If you've never been through that, like, it's obviously you're a corporate lawyer, so you know that. All the classic stories, again, like, that's why it's so important, in my opinion, to prepare for this in advance. And there's a lot of those pains that you can save yourself if you have like your data room documented properly, if you have like the proper financial statements that are like organized in the proper way, audited if it can. But on that documentation, that stress. Again, I remember cannot believe like how demanding was like the reps and warranties. And maybe that was just my process, but the list was like going on for forever, and you need to document everything and backup information. And so I was literally thinking, okay, so that's going to be like a 2 working cap, which I've also heard on your podcast, and same thing for us. It was the thing, I don't know if it's done on purpose from a negotiation standpoint, but the kind of the thing that was kept for the very, very last minute. Like, I'll deal with working cap later on, but it has an impact, even like for a SaaS business, like it can certainly have an impact. So things like that. There's also like for us, obviously being a Canadian company being purchased by an American company, there's some fiscal, legal like differences and things like that we had to face. But again, overall, I think that we had a very good partner on the other side, and it was as good as a process as it can be. Obviously, there was bumps in the roads, and we were, until it's done, you're not 100% sure that it will happen.
How long did the process take from LOI to close?
For us, it was extremely fast, but like less than 3 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've heard that this is really fast.
That is very fast. Very fast.
And closing, money transfer, everything, like 3 months.
What was the multiple what did that look like? The negotiation of the multiple on the business?
That was not like a big negotiation, to be honest with you, because like they would not negotiate much. I think the negotiation was like between the different offers that we've been receiving and like the terms, and we were able to, I guess, make some wins on both sides. Like they made some wins, we made some wins, but there was not a massive negotiation there, because again, our story was like we initiated a process, which was not the ideal scenario. Ideal scenario is that somebody knocks on your door and say, hey, we want you. And even that, it's not an ideal scenario. It has its own set of challenge, because now you only have one buyer. And as a SaaS founder, you're thinking, okay, so do I sell to these guys, or do I start a process to see if you can get a better offer? So maybe another podcast we can discuss about that. But for us, there was not like much negotiation. We knew how much your business was worth, like with a big range. But I think that one of the things that we did well is that we had a realistic view and understanding of how much our business was worth. And that's a problem that I'm trying to fix also with Optionality, my new startup, that I want to talk about it necessarily, but we can. But like the story there is that and I've heard it on your podcast before also, like you get like the 10x like revenue and AR and all of that stuff. And yeah, there's some people that are getting that. But even if you look at the best ever venture index, like I look at the Cloud 100 index just before going on the podcast, and there's actually nine companies out of 100 on the best ever cloud index that are over 10x. Okay. And like, I have the names there, and you're like, they're Cloudflare and CrowdStrike, and they're huge companies. So you got to be realistic in terms of how much your business is worth based on your size, your industry, your client concentration, your growth rate, your churn rate, and basically look at the multiple, look at the other conditions, like I've said before, and be comfortable with a deal that makes sense for you. And that conversation needs to happen before you're even starting the process, because when you're going to be put into some numbers, you need to know whether you're line in the sand. This is not acceptable, but over the market speaks. When you're doing a process, the good thing is that when they say that, and you probably heard it a few times before, but at the end of the day, the company is valued what people are willing to pay for it.
Yep.
So when you start the process, that's one of the way that you can really know. And sometimes like you run through that's the beauty of the process. You get at the period of time, based on market conditions, based on your condition as a business, you're like, this is what people are willing to pay for your business. Because we've done our own work and we were realistic. Obviously, we wanted the highest multiple as possible, but we knew also that it could be lower based on certain things, and we were comfortable with that. And we still like felt that we would be a good transaction for everybody. So it made the whole process simple for everybody.
So it sounds like when you went into the process, you knew what your value was. You were comfortable with you knew what the multiplier on the business was going to be, and that was what you ended up getting. What was the multiple on the business, by the way?
I cannot say it because we have an NDA signed with KKR, but if you look at the kind of range but what I can tell you is that I was not unfortunately in the 10% that got like 10x multiple, but you know what, I can tell you that we were like the median, of the pack there.
Got it.
So again, like a pretty, in the baseball analogy, I know you shared with me that I think you're from Cincinnati. So I would say that it was not an overrun, it was a good double.
Okay, cool. All right, I want to talk about optionality. I'd love to talk about optionality. You're solving this problem what is the problem that optionality solves, actually? What is the problem?
I think that fundamentally the problem is that business owners are waiting too long before preparing to sell their business, and they're not maximizing their value. They're leaving tons of money on the table. But I think that fundamentally the other problem that we're not talking enough about is that the advisors are also not being very proactive, helping business owners getting prepared for that transaction. Because of that, what happened is a beauty contest. So when you want to sell your business, but you will have a lot of people that will be there and want to help you sell your business. But there's fewer people that are there to help you through that journey to get ready to build optionality, to build option, to maximize your enterprise value, to get ready for transaction. And my assumption and what I believe is that the people that will help you do that, get ready, will be the one that you will basically do the transaction with. So the reason why advisors right now are not being proactive enough, like with business owners, even like when I say advisors, I'm thinking about like accounting firms, commercial bankers, iBankers, financial planners. The reason why they're not doing it is that they don't have a scalable process or tool to do that at scale. If you're an accounting firm and you have like 2,000 SMB clients or lower mid-market customers, it's very hard to dedicate the amount of time that is required to answer those initial questions that I'm sure that everybody on your podcast have as a question is how much my business is really worth. Not, I think it's worth that from 2 years ago, 6 months ago, based on my friend's business who also had a SaaS business, but in a totally different vertical, different growth rate, different size. He told me that he sold it for on this podcast for 3 times revenue. Now, like, what is really worth? Okay, what fundamentally I can get from this transaction right now? What's the best timing for me to sell that company? Also, the market conditions, the deal sector intensity there, is the multipliers are optimal right now? Is there some players that are strategic that are interested in buying us? So the timing consideration is also very important. And the last thing, which is very important, is that what can I do? And I think that there was one of the podcasts that I've listened with Matt from SaaS Academy that was talking a lot about, as a founder, there's also a lot of things that you can do to maximize your enterprise value. So if you're going to sell your business, what can you do right now that will have an impact on your ability to sell your business? Because it's not because you want to sell your business that you will necessarily find a buyer. There's a lot of people that are thinking for a long period of time, they're not getting ready, they're not preparing themselves, and they think that the minute that they will want to sell their business, they're going to be a lineup of people there to buy it, and it's not true. Sorry to make the announcement. But what can you do to maximize your enterprise value right now? And that's what we're basically solving with Optionality. We're allowing the advisors to collaborate with their clients, the business owners, to answer these questions and help them achieve their desired outcome.
How does the platform do that?
The first thing that we've done is basically we've built an AI copilot that would basically help the advisor do an initial enterprise valuation assessment based using basically like financial methods like capitalized cash flow, discounted cash flow analysis, as well as basically generating comparables. And we're using artificial intelligence, basically semantic AI, to find the best potential comparables from public company comparables and private transactions. So we've assembled a data set of private transaction, and we're able basically to generate a pitch deck for any company using a URL. So you can put the URL of any company in our platform. We generate a pitch deck. We basically vectorize that text, if I can say, that pitch deck, and we use that as the foundation to generate the comparables. So we have comps, we have basically like financial information. We can benchmark your company. So you can say, based on your company, this is how you compare real versus real benchmark companies similar to yours. This is where you're outperforming the market. This is where you're underperforming the market. Because part of this, and I think that part of the success and why we had a good transaction with Gazelle was that we were knowledgeable and realistic about our performance. Again, we did tons of great things, like fastest growing company in Canada, like tons of like great things. But there was things like when you compare to the guys that are having 10x, this is what they're doing. This is the kind of growth that they're having. This is their CAC. This is their LTV. This is their churn. This is their net retention dollar. Are we best in class in these KPIs? Are we average or are we below average? So we're able to basically demonstrate that to a business owner and say, okay, based on that thing and your football field, if you've done like business valuation before, that there's football fields and there's multiple methods, and then you're trying to find out, okay, so am I the 3x guy or am I the 10x guy? Well, you look like you're more like a 4x guy, and here's why. But here's what you can do short term and midterm to maximize that enterprise value. There's things, again, that you can do that are fairly easy and simple that I think can have a huge impact on your valuation.
What's an example?
I think that the number one example for me is to evaluate where you have like weaknesses in your team. Okay. And the KPIs will tell you that if you have like issues with like cost control or growth, okay, what's it? Maybe you need like a VP sales. If like it's a founders led sell primarily, don't really have like a sales team. Can you basically, again, pick up like one product, one feature, one new vertical and say, we're going to basically go and hire an account executive to develop that market and build funnel for us in that space. And then all of a sudden you say, okay, so we know that we have a weakness there, but this is what we're doing about it. And here's some of the early wins that we're having. So that would be like a very good example of something that I see very often, but at least now you're addressing part of your problem, and without going and I'm not saying go and hire like 6 BDRs and 3 A's. Okay, so let's build something. So you have like a story to tell. You can get some early wins. So that would be one example. In a more traditional industry can be like cost optimization. It could be like basically getting your financials audited properly, making the proper adjustments to your EBITDA and like a realistic external view on what is your sustainable EBITDA. Because if you think as a founder, because you're looking at your financial statement and okay, this is we have like a $1.5 million EBITDA, but the reality is that the buyer will buy you based on the like average of the past 3 years, and your average is like 1.2 million minus adjustment. You're 1.1. Well, all of a sudden, you're probably worth $2 million less than you thought that you were, just based on that thing. So things like that could be done, but there's also like value creation. Just like what are some of the strategic initiatives that you can put in place that can have like impact on your value. So that's what I'm trying to do. And my opinion is that the more the business owner and the advisors will collaborate together proactively. And the starting point is like having a better understanding of their business work, their options. Also, we're focusing a lot about SaaS and I know your podcast is SaaS Buyers Club. The journey of a SaaS business founder should be like the SaaS, the growing club. You're growing your business, you're investing in your business, and maybe the outcome is going to be to sell it. But the idea is for everyone that wants to sell this business, there's going to be like 9 SaaS founder that wants to raise capital, that wants to invest, that wants to find out like what do they need to do to get to that 10x multiple. And there's nobody really that is answering that question. Everybody's like giving you like very big ranges, but nobody really puts you and give you like a reality check of, listen, this is the range. This is where you fit in that range. But more importantly, you can get closer to this by doing these things. And that's really my passion and my dedication with Optionality and the team. It's to build that platform where the advisor and the business owner can collaborate, have that reality check, and work on a plan so they can achieve their desired outcome. And
So is the end user the advisor? for the platform. That's what it sounds like.
That's the decision that I've made. I think that selling your business, it's such an important decision. And that's, if there's one advice that I can give to the audience here, is that hire, work with an advisor or advisors and involve them early on, before even receiving an LOI, before starting the process, even we're thinking about this in the next 2 to 3 years, we're starting having those conversations. So early on, because there's so many mistakes that they're going to prevent you from doing. They're going to basically help you negotiate a better LOI, better multiple. So I choose to basically build a platform to empower the advisors to have those conversations. Obviously, again, for them, they invest in our tool and our platform that allows them to be more efficient, having more conversation, which means basically more deal flow, more opportunities for them. So again, if you're now able with Optionality to have times more conversation with business owners, because the preparation time to have that conversation is in minutes instead of hours, well, you're going to have more basically deal flow. You're going to uncover more opportunities. You're going to find out more potential transaction. And that's my bet there. So hopefully again, my thinking is that's the best way I can help the entrepreneurs, is by basically empowering their advisors to help them answer those questions in a more efficient way.
Yeah, I think there's the whole mission of this podcast is to help SaaS founders get better exits. And I think the whole idea has been, okay, acquisitions are a mystery to so many founders. And I hear Optionality solving one of the big mysteries for founders, which is, okay, you're in the 3x multiple range. You want to get to maybe more closer to the 5 to 10x multiple range. How do you do that? Here are some ways that you could do that. That's a huge value add for founders.
Absolutely. So. And we're open right now where we basically shipped our MVP. We're recruiting for beta testers, both on the advisory side of things. So if you're an iBanker, if you're a lawyer, if you're an accounting firm listening to this, reach out. If you're a business owner also and wants to basically explore how much your business is worth and what are how do you benchmark versus seller companies, and what are some of the past transactions to companies similar to yours that happened in the past 5 years, and what you can do exactly to your point, Omeed, about to maximize enterprise value. I'd be happy to see how we can help with the product.
Awesome. Simon, this has been so much fun, very valuable, a lot of good stuff shared here. I want to thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Omeed.
Absolutely. And for all the listeners out there, Simon's information will be in the show notes below, so you'll be able to reach out to him. The Optionality website will be there as well. I encourage you to reach out to him. As he mentioned, and this is my vision, if you listened to the podcast before, 2 to 3 years before you sell, starting to prepare for your exit. So Simon and I very much meet in that vision. And so if you're out there listening, you've probably thought about selling your business at some point. Most founders talk about selling their business at some point in the journey. So take the steps. And this is a great tool to do that. So with that being said, thank you so much again to all the listeners out there for joining on another episode of SaaS Buyers Club. Would love if you follow, subscribe, comment, and we'll see you next week.